And you may realize that I got cut short in my last video. I've already done this. But let's continue with contemporary trends in psychoanalytic group theory. Effective group therapy. Turn my heater off. For this approach includes individuals with borderline. You can use DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, in the object relations approach because borderline has a high comorbidity with trauma. And usually that would be trauma in childhood, and that is indicative of the borderline features that come out in borderline personality disorder. And that would suggest that there were issues with that attachment figure, and helping to have that differentiation of self and healthy version of self and attachment and feeling secure in self would help to mediate some of the symptomology of borderline. Additionally, narcissistic features also have a high comorbidity with trauma. And so these are both interesting personalities to work with in a group setting for sure. Like I said, you can imagine that individuals who are suffering with these disorders could be problematic in group. It's going to be rare. I want you to read up on both of these in your chapter. It's so important that you understand borderline personality disorder and narcissistic. They are very difficult, and you may not find a narcissistic person in your group therapy very often. Typically, it's difficult. The only reason they come is if someone perhaps has made them come. Usually not going to seek out counseling to better themselves or work on themselves, right? Because it's not in their awareness that there's anything wrong with them. Now, one of the more modern approaches is this brief psychodynamic therapy. It is a shorter 10 to 25 sessions and does continue to have the concepts of psychoanalytic and psychodynamic, but it's brief and involves interactive, directive, and self-disclosing strategies, and has a here and now focus, which is much like Gestalt. Psychoanalytic group work in schools probably wouldn't be what you would ever come across, I would imagine. Very interesting to me. Helping them understand their problems, maybe from looking back into their early childhood, looking at their ego functions. This is probably not something, like I said, that you're ever going to see. But a group leader, if you were leading a group, you would, of course, just like we did in the beginning of the lecture, you would work on resistance, transference, anxiety, and ego defense mechanisms. And so you can see why it could be very helpful, but I've never seen it done. It might be interesting to find out if that could be done. I can imagine if you could do a deep work like this in the schools, it could be really, really helpful. All right, and psychoanalytic with multicultural populations. So working in symbolic ways can be really powerful for many cultures. As you recall, we've used projective tests in psychoanalytic, like the Rorschach, the thematic apperception test, free association. This could be very useful in certain cultures. Many cultures have a high emphasis on their family background. So asking questions about the past and the family and the picture of the family and the struggles from an analytic perspective could be useful, as long as you're flexible and aware of bias, as always. So the evaluation of a psychoanalytic group, the contributions and the strengths of this approach. Understanding how the past contributes to the present is important. It's not only important because I think it is, because of my lens. It's important because the brain thinks it's important. And because brain research is definitely showing us how much the past affects us in the present. So there is a lot of power in thinking about things from this model. You don't have to be a psychoanalytic therapist to think like one and use analysis in your work. Some of the concepts in psychoanalytic group therapy can be extremely powerful for you. Analysis of the anxiety, looking at the ego defense mechanisms, and definitely analyzing the resistance. There's something there. What is it? The concept of transference and countertransference are so important in our work. They happen all the time. They happen to me now. You have to know what that is and be able to evaluate it. I love this about our field, the fact that we continually get to evaluate ourselves and grow. That's one of the things that's so intriguing about it. We never stop learning, and we never stop growing and changing as a part of our practice, which is, to me, just a beautiful part about what we do. As always, there's limitations to the psychoanalytic group. It could be feminist view certain concepts of Freud as limited, just certain. The others are not, but he was certainly an interesting fellow. Doesn't always give full attention to social and cultural factors, but the way you can infuse it is what I was just mentioning. Because certainly there are elements of it that are very appealing to many cultures. It's just the way that you approach it that matters. The way that you know your client and you understand what their worldview is. It's more concerned with long-term personality reconstruction, which is what I do in EMDR, and it works. It's costly long-term for a lot of people, so it could be a barrier. I wish it weren't, because some of this work is so powerful, and we're hoping that we can break those barriers down in the future. Sorry, this was broken into two, so please make sure you watch this one as well as the first one.